So when you go back to those early days, what do you think that's changed in the market? What have you been seeing, and what did you detect 3 years ago that said, "Boy, as a sales leader, I have to have a different perspective on things"?
Yeah, great question, Jody, and happy to be here. Look, I think when we look at the market 3 years ago to today, it's a very different looking market to start with. There's a lot more volatility in the market, and when we've got that global macroeconomic volatility, that usually means extra scrutiny on investment decisions. So, in a net new hunting sales environment, we sort of picked up on that. We saw more stakeholders, more board level, more PE firm involvement in financial decisions that historically would have been a CHRO or a CFO signing off. And I think the way in which companies are not just making decisions, but evaluating vendors in the first place has also dramatically changed as well. I think these days companies can get a pretty good feel for the market with one click of the button using their LLM of choice, and do a lot of that software vendor research without even engaging software vendors. And obviously that's only as good as the public information that's out there and available. So we sort of saw that and recognized the need that have the ears of the executives that know what their company OKRs are, know what the priorities are, potentially know what their challenges and shortfalls or shortcomings of their existing tech stack are as well. And they can bring us, almost catapult us forward from an account research level without us having any direct interaction. So I think that was a big turning point, was just this sort of realization that, hey, if we can start to join forces with these firms that have influence in these sort of cold net new accounts, we're probably a much higher chance of earning the business down the road if we can leverage those relationships.
Did you have kind of that moment? Was there something that happened, an event that said, as a sales leader, I really need to start. My thoughts are there's change. This has validated the change. Was that something that happened to you? Can you recall?
Yeah, we're always in the business of continuous improvement, so we're always looking for ways to refine around the edges. But when you inherit a quota uplift that's north of many, many millions in a net new territory where you sell a bunch of deals the year prior and those deals and accounts come out of your territory, you've got to do a hell of a lot more with less. And so we looked at that and said, hey, if we do things incrementally slightly better this next fiscal year, we're going to fall short. So we need to look at sort of fundamentally new ways of working that could open up new sources of pipeline for us. And I think a key turning point for us was the emergence of our partnership with AWS. Now, historically, we have sold through the office of the CHRO, and they've been a great persona for us, great friends to us over the years. We look at CIOs, CTOs, and historically they've been there at the end to support some integration or security questions, but we haven't really lent into that stakeholder. And we very quickly discovered that AWS is all over that executive. They know exactly every IT project that's on the horizon, all their front office revenue generating apps that may be running on their infrastructure. And for us, it was a bit of a blind spot. And then sort of towards the tail end of deals, we looked at transacting through AWS Marketplace as a bit of a glide path through approvals. AWS was already vetted from a security, infosec, compliance, audit standpoint. The billing infrastructure was all there. Finance was familiar with them. So we looked at that as an avenue to compress that sort of security and contracting evaluation due diligence process towards the late stage of deals. And we saw that winning momentum, right? So, we win one through AWS, reps hear about it. They want to learn more. I think my team in New York at the time did 4 of the first 6 deals with AWS globally. So we had a really great sort of head start, and then it just compounded from there in the best way possible. So, that's just one strategic ally. There's obviously many other partners that have influence within the accounts that we're selling into. But that was one that we were able to sort of tap into and really drive more deals, drive faster deals, and drive.
Okay, a brand new account that you're really not familiar with. And the typical thing is you fill out the RFP and you kind of throw it and you kind of hope that for the best, right? But you're right, everyone's so much more sophisticated now. So when you think about those net new accounts, how does this whole multi-partner strategy play into how you engage those accounts?
Great question, Jody. And look, I've led net new sales teams for a decade now. If you're looking at a cold prospective customer account where we don't have any real meaningful history of engagement, compare them to someone that's been maybe locked inside for 10 years. They haven't had Wi-Fi. Let's assume they haven't had TV. All they know is status quo and working with the incumbent vendors that they've had, right? And we see this a lot, right? A company comes to us, they've been on PeopleSoft for 20, 30 years. All they know is PeopleSoft and the way that they've used it. If you take that analogy, someone comes outside for the first time in 10 years, let's say there's a tourist that walks past and says, hey, I'm looking for directions to the nearest grocery store. How does that person know, right? All they know is what they've been doing inside for 10 years. They don't know about the new highway. They don't know about Google Maps. They don't know you could take an Uber there. Maybe they don't even know that DoorDash exists and you can have groceries delivered to your front door in the first. And you can read all of those functional requirements. None of them tell you why a company is going to market. Is it a modernization improvement? Have they had compliance issues? Is it an integration issue? Is it just that it's got a lousy UI and they need to drive better adoption? Is there an AI strategy? Right? These are the key things that would influence, do we think we're a good fit for this company, or is this better off going to someone else? Now, we may not know that because they're a prospect and we haven't had a history of engagement there, but someone does, right? Whether that's incumbents, third-party advisors, management consultants, you name it, right? Someone knows what's top of mind for that organization, what their key OKRs are, maybe what's broken today that is number one issue for the CEO or board. So for us as sellers, it's incumbent to we get shortlisted and then we're too expensive, or they had their vision lies somewhere else. And again, I think a lot of that starts pre-RFP. So sweat the ecosystem around you, look for those insights from those that know, and I think we'll all be off to a better direction ahead.
So you understand this top of mind, but now you have new reps coming on board every quarter. How do they learn? How do they all have to come to you? Are you the source of this? Or how do we get these reps up to speed on this, what is really extremely complex?
I do think it's a core responsibility of any sales leader to, be that drum beater of the key principles and the key behaviors that you want to instill across your sales force. So for me, that notion of coalition selling and how do you leverage the ecosystem around you to, again, find more deals, advance them faster, sell higher, win at a higher clip. That's core to what we do, right? As quota carrying sellers and selling leaders. So I think the other is just, behaviorally, it's a notion of trust, right? So often sellers are control freaks. They want to control their own destiny. They want to quarantine as many folks out of the sale as possible so that they can monitor the success and the steps themselves. But at the end of the day, the sort of the arms around alliance selling style versus the elbows up is much more effective. So it's just that continual reminder that sellers need to embrace those around them that have influence within these accounts, whether they're incumbents or advisors or whatnot. There's value to be had there if you are managing that ecosystem effectively. And then I think, as we look out to the future of enterprise sales, I mean, no software vendor these days is avoiding the topic of AI. And the notion of interoperability is probably more important than it's ever been. So if you're a tech vendor and you're not engaging with the likes of Salesforce, AWS, Databricks, Snowflake, and many, many more, you're probably doing yourself a disservice. So I think for us, it's that coaching that you can run all the right steps in your sales methodology. You can have your perfectly built org chart with all your executive influencers. But if you're neglecting that sort of the third column around partners, you're leaving yourself some blind spots in the deal there.
So Matt, as we wrap, there's many CROs on this call and listening to this video, and they might be smaller companies, they might be new to their role. Considering this whole multi-partner world that we live in, what is some advice you'd give as we close our discussion today?
Yeah, look, I think in the new AI world where every seller is, using their own LLM of choice, assume that every prospective customer that you're trying to sell into is doing the same. So they're doing that analysis of your capabilities before your first engagement, and assume that probably your biggest differentiators are not super public, right? We keep ours pretty closely guarded so that our competitors can't replicate them. And assume that then means that prospective customers aren't fully aware of what those differentiators are as well. I think look at how to better embrace the ecosystem around you. That can be from looking at garnering better account knowledge to identifying joint opportunities to work together, to accelerating deals through to closure or winning at a higher clip. But a key part of that is you also need to factor in the supporting infrastructure to support that process and the people behind it. It's very hard to do on a Google sheet. So, I think about how you can make that a scalable endeavor. And then I think lastly, as we look at the new AI world, that notion of interoperability, right? I think really consider who are your software allies, what organizations can you partner up with, where does it make sense to go in sort of arms up as opposed to elbows up? And I think that's going to be the new world, right? Is proven integrations, interoperability, and trust in the data across your agentic AI technology capabilities.
Well, Matt, thank you for joining us today, and everyone on the